My name is Debbie Brookstein. It's Tuesday, November 5th, 1997. Today I'm interviewing Ida Zorwell. Ida, would you please tell me your name, including your maiden name?
Ida Berkovsky Zorwell.
You'll have to spell Berkovsky for us, please.
Berkovvici. That's a very tough one for people. And my folks were born in Romania, about 65, like from Omaha to Lincoln.
Where were you born?
I was born November 7th, 1911. I have a birthday coming up this Friday.
Were you born in Omaha?
I was born in Omaha at 1017 Farnham. My dad had a pawn shop and we lived upstairs. I have no idea how many rooms. Then we moved to 314 South 10th. My father had a small grocery and eventually turned it into a pawn shop. And our next door neighbor were Italian. He was a shoemaker. Their name was Circo. And I played with their twin, Rose. I believe the other one's name was Ida, but I'm not sure. And we had and then family by the name of Brick, she is now Rose Zygmunt. We were very close friends. They lived about 2 blocks south of us. We lived at 1/10 of. We lived at 340, and they lived the back of their store. And I remember her sister, Sarah Ossoff, and Pearl Brick. I go back a long way.
What was the name of your family store?
There was no name. It was just the Berkovskys.
Uh-huh.
And the Brick was the Brick Grocery.
Uh-huh.
And next to them was the Ossoff Shoe Company.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember my background very, very well.
What were your parents' first names?
My father was Mayor, and my mother was Yenta. And I had a brother, Moses, Jacob, and Israel, and my sister was Rebecca, whose birthday would have been yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And she would have been 98 years old. She was 12 years older than I was. We were she was very good to me, as were my brothers. My brother was Moses, Jacob, and Israel. So we all had very biblical names.
Mm-hmm. What grade school did you attend?
I beg your pardon?
What grade school did you attend?
Pacific School, and then in the 7th grade we moved to 31st and Lincoln Boulevard. So I went to Webster School. And there were quite a few Jewish children at Webster.
Do you remember who any of them were?
I remember the Wines, who lived at 28th and Webster, which was just about a third of a block away from Webster School.
Who were some of those children? Who were some of the Wine children?
They were Ben Wine and Sam Wine that I remember. And the funniest thing, in 1964, I went to work with my boss, Charlie Gust, who used to pick me up almost every morning. And we were at 44th and Fun when Dave Wine hit the back of my boss's car, but says he doesn't remember it. But I've had 2 back operations because of it. So I remember it very well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I share a room with his sister-in-law, Millie Wine. But I'm hoping to be changed very soon. In fact, I'm reasonably sure I'll be changed she isn't aware of. She knows I want to. That doesn't always work.
Let's back up to your Lincoln Boulevard home.
We lived at 3117 Lincoln Boulevard from 1923 until I got married from there. I met my husband on a blind date. He was Ben Zorwell from Council Bluffs, and I met him through a very good friend, Harry Rosenthal, and Seymour Cohn. There were a lot. The Shikens were good friends of my folks.
Did they live in the neighborhood?
The Shikens lived in Council Bluffs.
Okay.
And we lived in Omaha. They knew each other from the time I probably can remember, but I can't give you a definite date on that.
Did you go to Council Bluffs very often as a child?
We used to go to a family by the name of Goldberg, and my sister worked with Frida Goldberg. She worked at Aaron Farrer and Sons from 1915 till 1949. And when she started in 1915, she had already graduated high school because she was 12 years older than I was. She made $15 a month. And when she quit, she made $45,000 a year, which is quite a... And even the Farrers in St. Louis were very well of my sister Beck. She was a very well-known young lady. And she belonged to several Jewish organizations. She belonged to Hadassah. My mother belonged to Hadassah. So we go back to Hadassah for a long, long way, when the dues were all of $3 a year, and $3 was a lot of money back then. It isn't just peanuts as it is today.
Did your mother do any work with Hadassah?
She was a member. I mean, every time they asked for money, she gave them money. But she wasn't active because she helped my dad in the store. And we had a 10-room house on Lincoln Boulevard.
And where was your father's store at the time?
My father's store was on 12th and Douglas. He started out on 10th between Farnham and Harney. Then we had a store at 1103 Farnham. He ended up at 1207 Douglas.
At 1207 Douglas, was that grocery or pawn shop?
Pawn shop. There were no groceries on Douglas.
Okay.
I remember almost everybody who was on Douglas Street at that time.
Well, tell me who they were.
They were, his name was Goldstein, the Swartzes, the Kurtzwans, the Kaplans. My father's store was just east of the hotel. I've been trying to think of the hotel name. It belonged to a Kaplan. It was a good-sized hotel. I think the top rate was $1 a day at that time. It's a little different than today. And when Weiner had the drugstore on 13th and Douglas, there was a big fire, and there was a fireman that jumped or fell, that I can't recall, who got killed by falling. It was a very sad time. I can't remember the year, but it was sometime in the, no, it must have been in the 40s, because I worked at the Jewish Community Center. My first job was at the center on 20th.
Tell me about that.
I worked with Beth Stern, and she was such a brilliant... I want to cry when I see her today.
What kind of work did you do?
I did stenographic work. I worked for I worked for Sam Gerson for a while. And when he left, I worked for Jay Pearlstein.
Mm-hmm.
And then I made all of $50 a month in 1928 when I graduated. And when I went to work at the National Accessories, it was automobile parts.
Mm-hmm.
I got $75 a month, and in the late 1920s, that was a lot of money. It wasn't just by a couple of days, it was for a full 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
And I got off every Saturday at noon. You worked in the morning. And every other Sunday, which was a big deal back in the late 20s. So I was considered a rich worker at $75 a month. And when I got $85 a month, everybody was so envious.
What kind of work did you do?
Stenographing,
Mm-hmm.
typing,
Mm-hmm.
a little book, just general office work. And then in 1929, I went to work for a place called National Accessories. It was automobile parts. And I met a number of different people. I made $75 a month, and when I got raised to 85, people were so jealous.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of money back then.
What high school did you graduate from?
Graduated from Tech.
Mm-hmm.
And grade school, I graduated from Webster. I started at Pacific School
Mm-hmm.
and ended up in Webster School the last 2 years. So
Tell me about your high school years.
I'd go to football games, I went to the school activities, and when I graduated, I was editor-in-chief of the Tech News. So I went to, I'll never forget, I went to one school debate. Tech was debating Central. And Harry Wolf's son, Justin Wolf, was, and he would not name the girl who was on the team. His dad said, if you don't tell me who it is, I'm going to smack you right here. I'll never forget Harry Wolf for that. And the girl was Anne Rothenberg-Zabel, who she and I and her sister grew up together. The Rothenbergs were Romanian, my folks were Romanian, so they had a lot in common. And they knew each other in the old country, so that made a big difference. My father was my father was mayor and my mother was Yenta.
Mm-hmm.
And
What synagogue did you attend?
huh?
What synagogue did you attend?
It was called the Rosh Hashanah at that time.
Uh-huh.
It is now Beth Israel. Rabbi Taxon, and there was a Rabbi Charlotte. I went to Sunday school there for a good number of years.
Where was it located?
18th in Chicago on the corner. It was a brick building. It was and just to the east of it, there was a family. I think their name was Fisher. On Yom Kippur, during a break, the women got a 2-hour break. We'd sit on their porch, and the kid, my mother, like all mothers, they took sandwiches along for the kids, and we went over to these people to eat our lunch. It was a different world than it is today. People are very obviously eating on Yom Kippur. In fact, I have had to for a number. I only have 15% of a stomach. I have been sick a good part of my growing up years. But considering I'm pretty well now. for which I'm very thankful.
Could we back up to when you went to Sunday school? Do you remember who any of your Sunday school teachers were?
One was a Cooper, I can't remember her first name. And then there was Mr. Block's son. I can't remember his first name. I can visualize him, but I can't. But I had a number of teachers because I started Sunday school when I was probably 6 or 7 at the oldest, and I went until nobody graduated in those years. But I went until I started high school. I must have gone 7, 8 years. In fact, one of the girls I'm friendly with, she's Babe Dabrowski. She and I went to Sunday school from the time we were 8 years old. I've known her. So I don't know who asked me, do you know? I said, I've known her since when we were 8 years old. It was hard for her to believe that we've been friends. In fact, my brother Jay, worked for Ben Newman, her brother. My brother did their books. I helped out Ann Newman from time to time on a Saturday. So the Newmans, in fact, I knew their sister-in-law Ann before Babe did. She had a dress shop on 50th, right north of Dodge. She was on 50th.
Mm-hmm.
She had, I think it was called Ann's Dress Shop. I got a lot of my clothes there.
What was Ann's last name?
Her name was Melcher,
Mm-hmm.
Ann Melcher. I knew the Melchers long before Babe did.
Where else did you shop?
Oh, we shopped at Kilpatrick's. If you bought anything at Kilpatrick's, it was always expensive. I remember I had a coat when my mother took me shopping for a coat to Nebraska Clothing, to Goldstein's, and to her. I got a coat for $35, but what I wanted was a coat for $45. And my mother said that was just a little too much, because I had a brother who was not quite 2 years younger. And my sister was 12 years old. My mother had between my brother Jay and me, there was 10 years. So my mother actually raised 2 families. But my brothers and my sister were so good to me. I don't think people are like that. They can't afford to be. Because when you could buy a blouse for $1.50 or $2, or a skirt for a couple of dollars, it was a different world. Of course, that was a lot of money 60, 70 years ago.
What did your brothers and sisters do when they graduated from high school?
My brother became the first Jew to be an income tax collector in this part of the country.
Which brother was that?
My brother Moses.
Mm-hmm.
My brother Jay worked for Jake Bender, who had the Omaha Cap Factory. And my sister worked for Aaron Farrer from 1915 until 49 when she moved to California, where she started out at $15 a month, which was a good salary in 1915. You have to laugh at it now, but you didn't back then. I was 4 years old, so I guess I was 3. You didn't laugh. I was born in 1911, so I guess I was 4. We live in a completely different world today.
Mm-hmm. When you started out working,
yeah.
Were you dating also?
No.
Socializing?
No. I didn't date until I was, occasionally I'd go to a boy-girl party, but it was. I used to go out with Sam Shiken every once in a while. Oh, I had such a case on him until I met my husband, which was in 1931, and we got married in 33.
And what was your husband's name?
Ben Zorwell.
How did you meet?
On a blind date. He called me and asked me for a date. I said, call me later in the week. If I don't have another date, I'll go with you. And we started going on a Saturday. I think it was April 25th, if I remember. And we kept going. We got married August 12th, 1933. We celebrated our golden wedding on Saturday. I took my husband to the hospital on Sunday, and he died. I took him on the 14th, and he died the 24th of August of 1983.
Where did you get married?
We got married in Papillion because we got married secretly. We went to Papillion because they didn't announce it in the paper. And my folks weren't quite sure whether Ben was good enough. And when we announced we were going to get married, my father went to Council Bluffs to ask a number of people who were who knew my family. And when my father-in-law, if you're going to get into the Bracovas, you're getting into a very elegant family. I'll never forget when we got engaged, it was during Hanukkah. My mother was an excellent cook. My mother made potato knishes and apple strudel. My father-in-law said to my mother, take the recipe by Mrs. Bracovas. My mother-in-law said, no, it wouldn't come out like that. Because she was one who jollied if the kids were, it means it was spared. If something needed fixing, my mother-in-law would say, 5 will do it. My mother would say 7 will do it. And it made a difference. It was, of course, the cake had to be whatever recipe. But my mother-in-law was not. And my husband said, my mother cooks better than his mother.
What were the names of your husband's parents?
My father-in-law was David, and my mother-in-law's name was Elka.
And where did they live? Did they live here in Omaha?
No, they lived in Council Bluffs. They lived at 506 South 21st, and they lived there as long as I knew my husband. And they moved to Philadelphia in, Sarita was born in 35 in January, and they moved in March. They had gone to their nieces, my mother-in-law's niece got married the year before, and they decided they wanted to go to Philadelphia where there were more Jews, which I didn't blame them. They left when Sarita was just weeks old. She was born in January. They moved in March. And they lived there until they passed away.
Did Ben have brothers or sisters?
He had 5 sisters, but he was the only boy. So he was a little bit spoiled when it came to food. There wasn't much. My father-in-law was a shoemaker. And so he just eked out a living. When you have 6 kids, it takes quite a bit of living. You have to buy 7 pair of shoes. There's a lot of shoes. 5 girls' shoes in one. But my husband was a paper boy for a long time. And then he went to work in a grocery store. And he went up until he went to work for the Metropolitan Life Insurance. That's the way he made his portion. But he never had to give his folks any money. My brothers did.
So Ben worked in the life insurance business?
He worked for the Metropolitan Life for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. We got started on that and did fairly. Sarita was born January 7th, 1935. We were married about 18 months, which was a long time back then. People got pregnant right away. But he was very careful because he didn't want all that additional expense. But I had a private room when she was born. I think it was all of $5 a day. A little different than it is today.
Did you have any other children?
I have one daughter, Betty.
Mm-hmm.
She was born in June 19. There's 9.5 years difference in my girl.
Mm-hmm.
And I never got pregnant in between. And it took me quite a long time to get pregnant with Betty. When you don't have kids for almost 10 years. But the second pregnancy went much better than the first.
Did you stay home with the girls?
I stayed home. I didn't go to work till Betty was almost 10.
Mm-hmm. What did Ben do after the life insurance position?
He worked at the bomber plant during the war, and then we went into the grocery business. We were on 16th and Burdett, and our store was called Ben's Grocery. We lived at the street-level apartments on North 16th, and then in the La Grata until we got married. We lived out north about 16, 17 years. And then we lived at the La Grata. We lived at the street level, then the La Grata Court. And in the late 40s, we moved to 50th in Chicago. And we had a very lovely, and then we moved into an apartment on 48th and Dodge. It was called the Benbow Court. It's still standing insofar as I know. So we lived there for a number of years.
When you had your store on 16, were there any other businesses around that you recall?
Yeah. Next to us was a house, and then just 2 doors away there was a restaurant. There was a couple of, the Plotkins were just down the street. And then across, just south of it, it was Schmidt's butcher shop. They were Gentiles. And there was the cigars. There was a lot of business on 16th Street. I don't know what it is today. I'd hate to even drive through that neighborhood now. It was a very popular neighborhood. There was the La Grata Court, which belonged to Bob Noddle. And we lived at the street level, then at the La Grata. And there was the Sherman apartment. There were the Nathan apartments were there. I don't know if any of them are there anymore.
Who were some of your friends when you were raising your family?
Well, there was Blanche Bland, who I correspond. We talk every week. She lives in Dallas. I call her 1 week. She calls me. She was Blanche Rothenberg. Did you know Fanny Denenberg? Well, Fanny was Blanche's older sister. The Rothenbergs and the Coat knew each other in the old country, so we were friends here. And there were the Sternhills. Did you know the Sternhills? Well, and there were some people called Levine and the Swartz. When I see Phil Swartz now at the helm, it breaks my. I've known him since I was 5 years old. He doesn't know me. I talked to his wife yet. I don't even think he knows Helen. As I say, when I see him, I want to cry.
Mm-hmm.
When you know somebody since you're 5 years old and they don't know you, it breaks your heart.
Where did you educate your girls? Where did your girls go to school?
What my girlfriends do?
Where did your daughters go to school?
Oh, they went to Central High.
What about for grade school?
Grade school, they went to Lake School.
Lake?
Lake, 19th and Lake, which is no more. A lot of places aren't. Pacific School is no more, where I grew up, and my kid brother. And I don't know if, I know Lake School is no more.
Did your daughters go to religious school?
Yes, they
Where
both
did they
went
go?
to Bethel. Yes.
Where was Bethel then?
What?
Where was the synagogue where they went to religious school?
At Bethel, on 49th in Farnham.
Mm-hmm.
My children grew up very Jewish. Unfortunately, one of them did not marry, but she married a very fine young. He's a professor at Creighton, so you know he's not no dumbbell.
Who did your daughters marry?
One of them is married, older one is married to Dave Cooper, and the younger one is married to a Raymond Sedan. He's a professor at Creighton.
Are they both in Omaha currently?
Both my children, 5 of my grandchildren live here, and all 8 of my great-grandchildren live in Omaha. So I'm very, very lucky. In fact, one of my granddaughters came up yesterday with her 2 little ones. And I have a bedside table where I keep candy. And the oldest one always goes to the table first. Bubby, can I have candy? I even gave her some. Oh, she was so tickled because she got to take some home. My daughter bought me the miniature Hershey's and the Hershey Kisses. So I gave her a few of them. Because Felicia said, Bobby, don't give her too many. She's got Halloween candy at home. Even the little one, he's just 18 months. He knows where the candy is already. And Betty's daughter was over Sunday with her 2. One's just not quite 2, and the other is just 6 months. So he was sleeping. But the older one, he knows just where they all know where the candy is. But I love it. And what other pleasure do I have, if not the kids?
Right. Could we back up a little bit? Did you do any volunteering for any Jewish organizations?
I was the first president of Young Judea back in 22 or 23. Sylvia Ross and I and my cousin Rose, we went to Des Moines by train on a Saturday, and we had Sunday supper at the Jewish Country Club. Oh, people were grinning with it. You went to, and the club, but Hadassah paid for our trip. We thought we were so, I was, I think, a freshman in high school. So I wasn't very well known. Most people know who I am,
Mm-hmm.
or they know who the Rakovices were.
What did you do in later years? As you were raising your family, did you do any volunteer work?
Oh, I presume I volunteered through Hadassah.
Mm-hmm.
I've been active with Hadassah either 1922 or 23, whenever they started Young Judea.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I asked Sylvia one day if she remembered the trip, and she had one group, and my cousin was a sponsor of the group I was in. I went with my cousin Rose, and she took Laverne Feblowitz Newman. I'm amazed at myself how much I remember. When you go back, I had a lot of friends, but unfortunately, a good number of them have passed away. If you knew Fanny Denenberg, you go back a long way too.
What did you do after your children left home?
I stayed home for a couple of years, and then I went to work. I worked for a man called, it was Bud Cohn. I can't remember. I worked for, well, it was called National Accessories. It was automobile.
Mm-hmm.
And then I worked at H.A. Wolf's for a while.
What kind of company was that?
Real estate.
Okay.
I worked for Mr. Wolf and Herman Auerbach. And then I went back to work at the Jewish Community Center at 20th and Dodge. I worked there when I got married. We got married on Saturday night, got up Monday and went to work. Only one I told was Zelda. She was Zelda Safferstein. She was married to Maurice Stallmaster. And I know an awful lot of people. Unfortunately, many of them I know.
In later years, did you join any of the Jewish organizations like Young Energetic Seniors? And
I have belonged to Hadassah
mm-hmm.
as long as I can possibly remember.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I joined the council for 1 year. My sister-in-law was president of the Council of Jewish Women. Did you know Ann Brukovasi?
That was your sister-in-law?
Yes. She was married to my brother Mo. And my brother Jay was married to a Des Moines girl, so you probably... And is never married.
Did you and your husband retire at the same time?
No, I quit work. After I left the grocery store, I worked at the center for a short time. But I can't... He sold some insurance again.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't... It was not life insurance. It was more physical abilities. He did... And then he retired. Because he didn't live... He died in 83.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been dead for over 12 years.
How did you keep busy after he passed on?
That's a good question. I guess I worked part of the time.
Where did you live?
Huh?
Where did you live? Did you move after he passed on?
I lived at 49th and right off south of Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
He died when I lived at 1309 North 49th Avenue. I can remember. So, my memory, thank God, is still good.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think it's too good for my own good.
How did you end up at the Blumkin home?
I was in the hospital twice. I was here just a week before Pesach. I was here for a week. And then in June I was having these dizzy spells. I guess I passed out one night. I remember coming to. I was crawled from the bathroom into the bedroom and got up between my two beds, which had been given to one of my granddaughters. I have nothing. My Felicia took my everyday. She's going to save them and use them for Pesach.
Is Felicia your granddaughter?
Yes. She's my oldest granddaughter.
Mm-hmm.
She's Sarita's daughter. And do you know who Scott Litkey is? Well, Felicia's married to Scott. And he's quite a religious. The two that came up yesterday were my great-grandchildren. I'm very lucky. I have all of them here in Omaha. Mm-hmm. And, of course, I love them all very dearly.
So you're blessed with many visitors here at the home.
Yes, I am.
And what do you do for activities here?
I didn't play bingo yesterday. I went to lunch at the J.
With the young, young energetic seniors group?
Yes, the Yes group.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad they call it young energetic because they're mostly a bunch of old fetches. Because everybody at my table is in the late 70s mm-hmm. or early. Most of us are. Why they call us the Yes group, I never figured out.
Young in mind, perhaps. What else? What other things do you like to do here?
I like to play Mahjong, but I haven't played it for since mm-hmm. I've been here. There's nobody to play.
Who did you used to play Mahjong with?
I played with Gert Zorinsky. I played with a mixed group.
Mm-hmm.
We had our regular group, but occasionally I play with Marion Friedman, Gert Zorinsky, and she doesn't know where she is now. She was Gert Corney. I can't think of, I know it's with a T, but I can't. Mm-hmm. I played with a mixed group. I played some girls that moved out of town. Marion Friedman. Just a variety.
Mm-hmm. Ida, thank you so much for sharing your story today with me.
I'm glad to do it.
Everybody.
If it helps. It's just about 12 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.